Ambassador Zelitha's crystalline form shimmered with barely contained satisfaction as she addressed the assembled Galactic Council. The vast chamber, carved from a single asteroid and suspended in the neutral space between 7 star systems, hummed with the conversations of representatives from 300 species. Today would be memorable. Esteemed colleagues, Zelith began, her voice resonating through both the atmospheric processes and the telepathic networks that accommodated the Council's diverse membership. We gather to address the persistent violations committed by the species of Sulfuri, commonly known as Earth. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembly. The humans have been a source of gentle entertainment for the past 2 centuries since their first fumbling attempts at faster-than-light communication. Their crude ships, their endearing belief that they could negotiate as equals, their almost childlike wonder at galactic civilization. It had all been rather charming, like watching younglings play at being adults. Council Speaker Morvek, a towering being whose gas-based anatomy allowed him to float above the assembly, gestured for attention. His voice carried the weight of 5,000 years of diplomatic experience. The matter before us involves the human vessel Endeavour and its recent misunderstanding in Sector 47. Zelitha's form brightened. She had orchestrated this perfectly. 3 standard days ago, the human exploration vessel entered protected Zephyrian space without proper authorization. When confronted by our enforcement squadron, they refused to submit to standard containment protocols. Instead, they transmitted what can only be described as a formal declaration of territorial sovereignty. Laughter echoed through the chamber's translation matrices. Representative Krex of the Hive Worlds clicked his mandibles in amusement. Did they also demand tribute? Perhaps insist on exchanging shiny beads for our advanced technology. They demanded, Zelith continued, savoring each word, that our enforcement vessels withdraw immediately and recognize human expansion rights in the sector. They claimed that their continued peaceful compliance with Council regulations had been an act of courtesy, not submission. The laughter grew louder. Even the usually somber representatives from the old world seemed entertained. Humans making demands? The species that had taken 3 centuries to develop basic antimatter drives? The civilization that still used chemical propulsion for system-to-system travel? Speaker Morvek raised one of his tender-like appendages for silence. What was our response to this declaration? Standard enforcement protocol, Zelith replied. A single heavy cruiser was dispatched to escort the vessel to the nearest processing station. The humans will be given the usual educational tour of our capabilities, perhaps allowed to witness a star harvesting operation, then return to their system with a renewed appreciation for their place in galactic hierarchy. And Moravek's tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be straightforward. Zelitha's satisfaction dimmed slightly. The cruiser's overwhelming response reported a successful intercept. However, they have not responded to communications for the past 4 to 7 hours. The chamber fell silent. The overwhelming response was a kilometer-long vessel equipped with shields that could withstand stellar coronas and weapons capable of cracking moons. Its crew of 800 represented one of the finest examples of Zephyrian military engineering. Representative Thane of the warrior clans leaned forward, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's artificial sunlight. You're suggesting a human vessel destroyed one of your heavy cruisers. Not destroyed, Zelith corrected quickly. The ship's emergency beacon is still active. Long-range sensors indicate the vessel is intact but drifting. All attempts at communication have failed. Engine failure, suggested Council Member Vex, her serpentine form coiled around her speaking platform. The Zephyrians have always been prone to technological overconfidence. Zelitha's form flickered with indignation. Our vessels undergo complete maintenance cycles every standard month. The probability of catastrophic failure is less than. Then what do you propose happened? Speaker Moravek interrupted. The chamber waited. In the silence, the gentle hum of the asteroid rotation seemed suddenly ominous. Zelith had spent months planning this moment, this perfect opportunity to demonstrate human insignificance and Zephyrian superiority. But now, faced with the inexplicable silence of the overwhelming response, her certainty wavered. I propose, she said carefully, that we dispatch a full investigation fleet. 3 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. Whatever primitive trick the humans employed, it will not work twice. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Several representatives nodded their various anatomical equivalents of heads. The humans had gotten lucky, nothing more. Perhaps they had discovered some new application of their crude nuclear weapons, or maybe they had simply managed to disable the overwhelming responsive communications array through some accident. But in the far corner of the chamber, ancient observer Kirian remained silent. His species had been monitoring galactic affairs since before most of the current council member civilizations had discovered fire. His multifaceted eyes, each one capable of perceiving different spectrums of reality, had seen something troubling in the recent reports from human space. They weren't expanding randomly. Their exploration vessels followed patterns that suggested strategic thinking far beyond what their apparent technological level should have permitted, and their diplomatic communications, while maintaining the facade of naive enthusiasm, contained subtle linguistic structures that indicated significantly more sophisticated understanding of galactic politics than anyone had realized. As the Council voted to approve Zelith's investigation fleet, Kirian made a note in his personal files. Perhaps it was time to review the comprehensive files his people had been maintaining on human development. Files that painted a very different picture of Earth's capabilities than what the humans had been carefully allowing the galaxy to see. The vote passed unanimously. Within hours, 4 of the most powerful warships in Zephyrian space would depart for Sector 47, ready to remind humanity of its proper place in the cosmic order. None of them suspected they were about to discover that Earth had been playing the greatest long game in galactic history. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display with a calm expression of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire career. Around her, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their actions bearing none of the fumbling uncertainty that human vessels typically display when monitored by galactic surveillance. 4 vessels approaching, Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the sensor station. Configuration matches Zephyrian heavy cruiser design. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Chen nodded, her fingers dancing across a command interface with fluid precision. The display showed not just the approaching Zephyrian fleet, but a comprehensive tactical analysis that would have impressed even the Council's most advanced military strategists. Every weakness in Zephyrian shield harmonics, every blind spot in their sensor arrays, every predictable element of their battle doctrine, all catalogued and ready for exploitation. Status of the overwhelming response, she asked. Crew is secure in temporary detention facilities on Deck 12, replied Commander Park from the security station. Their ship is powered down but intact. No casualties, as ordered. Chen allowed herself a slight smile. The capture of the Zephyrian cruiser had been almost disappointingly easy. Decades of intelligence gathering had provided detailed specifications for their vessels, while carefully orchestrated incidents had allowed Earth's military to study Zephyrian tactics firsthand. When the overwhelming response had arrived expecting to escort a primitive human exploration vessel, they had instead encountered something far beyond their comprehension. The bridge's main screen shifted to show Earth's solar system, but not as the galactic community knew it. Hidden shipyards orbited in the shadow of asteroids. Massive defense platforms, disguised as research stations, formed an intricate web of protection around the inner planets. And throughout the system, vessels that officially didn't exist moved on missions that would reshape the balance of galactic power. Admiral Morrison sends her compliments, reported the communications officer. Operation Revelation is proceeding on schedule. All fleet elements are in position. Chen had known Morrison since their days at the Hidden Academy on Luna's far side, where Earth's best had been training in secret for over a century. While the galaxy saw humans as barely capable of interplanetary flight, Earth's finest officers had been studying every aspect of galactic civilization, learning from every species, and preparing for the day when humanity would step out of the shadows. Captain, Torres called out, his voice carrying a note of excitement. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Council Investigation Fleet. They are requesting our immediate surrender and demanding an explanation for the overwhelming response's disappearance. Put them through, Chen ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a Zephyrian command vessel. Admiral Hexa, his reptilian features betraying confidence bordering on arrogance, glared at Chen with eyes that had witnessed 1,000 victories against lesser species. Human vessel, Hexa began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. You are in violation of galactic law. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Chen stepped forward, her posture radiating a confidence that seemed to catch Hexa off guard. Admiral Hexa of the Zephyrian Third Fleet, your reputation precedes you. 4 to 7 successful subjugation campaigns, master of the Broken Moon Gambit, and holder of the Council's highest military honors. Hexa's expression shifted slightly. No human should have possessed such detailed knowledge of his service record. You will address me as Admiral and prepare for... I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Oath Defense Force, she interrupted smoothly, and I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The overwhelming response entered human territorial space without authorization and was detained according to established protocols. Its crew is unharmed and will be returned once this matter is resolved diplomatically. The Zephyrian Admiral scales darkened with anger. Human territorial space? You occupy a single system with crude chemical propulsion and basic energy weapons. You have no territorial claims beyond your own atmosphere. Chen's smile widened. Admiral, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about human capabilities. Computer, display current fleet positions. The tactical display that appeared on Hexa's screen wiped the arrogance from his expression. The 4 Zephyrian vessels, which moments before had been confidently approaching what they assumed was a single primitive human ship, now found themselves surrounded. 16 vessels had seemingly materialized from nowhere, their energy signatures unlike anything in the galactic databases. Impossible, Hexa breathed. Our sensors showed only your vessel. Our sensors are considerably more advanced than yours, Chen replied, as are our ships, our weapons, and our understanding of galactic politics. For 2 centuries, Admiral, humanity has been observing, learning, and preparing. We've studied every species in the Council, analyzed every weakness, and developed countermeasures for every technology you consider superior. On his bridge, Hexa frantically consulted his tactical officers. The readings were impossible. The human vessel showed power signatures that exceeded Zephyrian design parameters by orders of magnitude. Their shield configurations were unlike anything in the galactic databases, and their positioning suggested tactical awareness that rivaled the greatest military minds in Council history. What do you want? Hexa asked, his voice no longer carrying its earlier authority. Chen's expression grew serious. What we've always wanted, Admiral, to be left alone to develop as we choose. The difference is that now we have the power to ensure that wish is respected. Your fleet will withdraw immediately. The overwhelming response will be returned to you with its crew unharmed, and you will deliver a message to the Council. What message? That humanity is no longer playing by their rules. We've been nice for 2 centuries. Admiral, perhaps it's time the galaxy learned what happens when we stop. The transmission ended, leaving Hexa staring at a blank screen while around him, his officers struggled to understand how the balance of power had shifted so completely in the span of a single conversation. In the vast chamber of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being called as reports flooded in from across human space. The quiet little species that had provided 2 centuries of entertainment was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called with unprecedented speed. In the Great Chamber, representatives arrived through quantum gates and FTL transports, their conversations a mixture of disbelief, concern, and rapidly escalating alarm. The usual diplomatic protocols were abandoned as species after species reported the same impossible reality. Humans were everywhere, and they had been lying about everything. Ambassador Zelitha's crystalline form had lost its earlier luminosity, dimmed by the weight of reports flooding in from across the galaxy. She stood before the assembly, her voice carrying none of its previous confidence. The situation has evolved beyond our initial assessment, she began, her words triggering translation protocols in 300 languages. Intelligence reports indicate that human vessels have been operating throughout Council space for decades, possibly centuries, without detection. Speaker Moravec's gas-based form swirled with agitation. Explain how an entire species can conduct covert operations on such a scale without our knowledge. Representative Thane of the warrior clan stepped forward, his scarred exoskeleton bearing fresh marks from recent combat. My fleets encountered human vessels in the outer spiral 3 days ago. They knew our patrol routes, our communication frequencies, and our tactical doctrines better than our own officers. The engagement lasted 17 minutes. We lost 4 heavy cruisers. A shocked silence fell over the assembly. The warrior clans had never lost 4 vessels in a single engagement, not in 3 millennia of conflict. "How is this possible?" demanded Council Member Vex, her serpentine form coiled tight with tension. "Our intelligence networks monitor every species. Human technology has been catalogued, analyzed, and found to be centuries behind galactic standards." Observer Kyrian finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying the weight of accumulated knowledge. "Because we have been observing carefully orchestrated deceptions. My people have maintained comprehensive surveillance of human development since their first radio transmissions. The data we collected painted a picture of rapid but limited technological advancement. We now know that picture was deliberately crafted." He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The image showed Earth's solar system, but not as any council database had recorded it. Massive industrial complexes orbited every major body. Fleets of vessels moved between installations that dwarfed anything in council space. And throughout the system, defensive platforms formed an intricate network that could have challenged the combined military forces of a dozen council species. "This is impossible," whispered Representative Krex. "We have surveillance drones throughout human space. Our sensors would have detected." "Your sensors detected exactly what the humans wanted you to detect," Kyrian interrupted. "Every probe, every surveillance drone, every intelligence-gathering mission has been monitoring elaborate facades while the real human civilization developed in parallel dimensions, pocket universes, and spaces between spaces that they have somehow learned to access." The hologram shifted, showing a timeline of human development that contradicted everything the Council believed. While publicly struggling with basic fusion power, humans had been secretly mastering zero-point energy extraction. While their official vessels limped between planets on chemical rockets, their hidden fleets had been perfecting instantaneous translation technology that made Council FTL look primitive. "The deception extends beyond technology," Kyrian continued. "Human diplomatic communications have contained subtle linguistic patterns that suggest they have been studying our psychological profiles, our decision-making processes, and our cultural weaknesses for generations. Every interaction has been designed to reinforce our preconceptions while gathering intelligence." Ambassador Zelitha's form flickered with desperate intensity. "Even if this is true, they are still one species against 300. The combined might of the Council has already been compromised," interrupted a new voice. The chamber fell silent as the main communication array activated. The image that appeared showed Captain Chen, but she was no longer on the bridge of a single vessel. Behind her stretched a command center that rivaled anything in council space, filled with officers whose bearings suggested military traditions stretching back generations. "Honored representatives," Chen began, her tone respectful but firm. "I am Admiral Chen, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Force. I appear before you to correct certain misconceptions about humanity's intentions and capabilities." Speaker Moravec gathered his composure. "Admiral Chen, the Council demands an explanation for your species' deceptive practices and recent act of aggression." Chen's expression remained calm. "With respect, Speaker Moravec, humanity has committed no acts of aggression. We have defended ourselves when attacked and revealed our true capabilities only when threatened. As for deception, we have simply chosen to develop privately rather than submit to the galaxy's idea of our proper place. You have concealed advanced technology and military capabilities," accused Representative Thane. "This violates fundamental Council accords regarding species development monitoring." "Accords that humanity never agreed to," Chen replied smoothly. "We were never consulted about galactic law. We were simply informed that we would comply or face consequences. For 2 centuries, we chose compliance while preparing for the day when we could choose independence." The holographic display in the chamber center shifted again, now showing the current positions of human fleets throughout Council space. The scope was staggering. Hundreds of vessels, positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy, all previously undetected by the most advanced sensor networks in known space. "What do you want?" Speaker Moravec asked, his voice carrying the weight of dawning realization that the balance of galactic power had fundamentally shifted. Chen's expression grew serious. What we have always wanted. To be left alone to develop as we choose. To explore the galaxy without being treated as amusing primitives or potential threats. To trade and interact as equals rather than subjects. And if the Council refuses, demanded Zelith. Chen's smile was cold. Then you will discover that humanity's patience, like our peaceful facade, has limits. We have spent 2 centuries studying every species in this chamber. We know your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, and your breaking points. We hope it will not be necessary to demonstrate this knowledge. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. 300 species, representing the accumulated power and wisdom of galactic civilization, suddenly found themselves facing the reality that they had been outmaneuvered by the species they had considered least threatening. In the growing quiet, Observer Kyrian accessed his deepest files, searching for any clue about humanity's ultimate intentions. What he found chilled him to his ancient core. Earth had not just been preparing for independence. They had been preparing for war. Deep within the hidden command complex buried beneath Luna's far-side mountains, Admiral Elena Morrison stood before the greatest collection of strategic minds humanity had ever assembled. The War Council chamber, carved from solid rock and shielded by technologies that made Council surveillance impossible, hummed with quiet activity as Earth's finest military officers processed incoming intelligence from across the galaxy. Morrison had spent 40 years preparing for this moment, rising through the ranks of a military organization that officially didn't exist while the galaxy above remained blissfully unaware of humanity's true capabilities. Now, as reports flooded in of Council fleets mobilizing throughout known space, she felt the weight of her species' survival resting on decisions made in the next few hours. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a strategic engagement. General Hassan, head of intelligence operations, stepped forward. The Council's response is following projected patterns. 17 species have committed military assets to what they are calling the Human Containment Initiative. Combined fleet strength is approximately 4,000 vessels across 300 systems. Morrison nodded, unsurprised. Her strategists had war-gamed the scenario countless times. Fleet dispositions? Admiral Chen's demonstration in Sector 47 has convinced them that human military technology exceeds their estimates, but they still believe superior numbers will prevail. They are concentrating forces in 3 main battle groups, each one designed to overwhelm our defenses through sheer mass. The tactical display that dominated the chamber's center wall showed the galaxy in unprecedented detail. Red markers indicated Council fleet positions, while blue dots marked human assets. To any Council observer, the disparity would have seemed hopeless. Thousands of enemy vessels against a few hundred human ships scattered across impossible distances. But Morrison knew something the Council didn't. The human vessels on the display were only the ones they wanted the Council to detect. "Initiate Phase 2, she ordered. Throughout the chamber, officers activated systems that had been decades in the making. Across human space, technologies that had been carefully concealed began revealing themselves. The scope of humanity's deception was about to become clear. On the display, new markers began appearing. Not dozens of additional ships, but thousands. Vessels that had been hidden in parallel dimensions, masked by technologies reverse-engineered from captured Council equipment and improved beyond galactic understanding. Fleets that had been stationed in the spaces between spaces, ready to emerge when needed. General Okafor, Chief of Research and Development, provided the explanation that made several officers pause in amazement. Quantum folding techniques allow us to maintain full battle fleets in dimensional pockets that occupy the same space as a standard probe. Each of our scout vessels can deploy a complete task force in under 30 seconds. Morrison smiled grimly. Humanity had not just been learning galactic technology. They had been perfecting it, pushing beyond the limitations that had constrained Council development for millennia. While alien species had grown comfortable with their technological superiority, human engineers had been driven by the knowledge that survival depended on surpassing every benchmark. Intelligence update from Council Space, reported Colonel Martinez from the Communications Division. Emergency sessions are being held on 7 Council worlds. Several species are demanding immediate military action, while others are advocating for diplomatic solutions. Which species favor diplomacy? Morrison asked. Primarily the older civilizations. Observer Kirian's people, the Eternal Archive Keepers, and the Void Walkers. They seemed to understand the implications better than the younger species. Morrison wasn't surprised. Ancient civilizations had survived by recognizing genuine threats when they emerged. The younger, more aggressive species had grown too accustomed to easy victories over primitive worlds. The chamber's main communication array activated, bringing Admiral Chen's image from the bridge of the Defiance. Admiral Morrison, the Council battle groups are beginning final approach vectors. Estimated contact in 18 hours. Understood. Are you prepared for Phase 3? Chen's expression was grim but determined. All fleet commanders are confirmed readiness. The demonstration weapons are charged and targeted. If the Council forces refuse to withdraw, they will receive an education in human military doctrine. Morrison nodded. Phase 3 was humanity's final diplomatic gesture, a demonstration of power designed to prevent the need for actual warfare. But if the Council remained determined to force submission, Phase 4 would show them exactly what 2 centuries of preparation had produced. There's something else, Chen continued. We're receiving communication from individual Council species. 4 to 7 have sent private diplomatic inquiries, expressing interest in separate negotiations. Morrison felt a spark of satisfaction. The Council's unity was already fracturing. Faced with a threat they didn't understand, some species were reconsidering their automatic support for collective action. Humanity's psychological profiles of galactic politics were proving accurate. Maintain public channels with all species requesting dialogue, Morrison ordered. But make it clear that any agreements must recognize human sovereignty and independence. We will not accept protectorate status or limited autonomy. As Chen's transmission ended, Morrison turned to address the War Council directly. These officers represented the culmination of humanity's greatest secret, a military tradition that had been developing in parallel with their public civilization for over 2 centuries. While Earth's official government had fumbled through diplomatic exchanges with galactic powers, the Shadow Organization had been preparing for the day when diplomacy would fail. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison began, her voice carrying the weight of history. In 6 hours, we will reveal to the galaxy what humanity becomes when we stop pretending to be harmless. Our species has been underestimated for the last time. Whatever happens in the next few days, the Council will never again treat us as subjects rather than equals. The War Council chamber fell silent as officers contemplated the magnitude of what they were about to unleash. Humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage not as the amusing primitives they had pretended to be, but as a power that would reshape the balance of civilization itself. Above them, on Earth's surface, ordinary humans went about their daily lives, unaware that their species' entire future would be decided before the next sunrise. The greatest deception in galactic history was about to reach its climax. Morrison activated a personal communication system, connecting directly to human commanders throughout the galaxy. All fleet elements, this is Command Alpha. Humanity's peaceful facade ends now. Prepare to show the Council what we really are. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth had been so very, very careful to play nice. The Battle of the 3 Suns began not with violence, but with wonder. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance as the Council combined fleets emerged from hyperspace in the Kepler 442 system, their formation designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority. 4,000 vessels arranged in perfect tactical formations, representing the greatest military force assembled in galactic history. Their combined firepower could have reduced entire star systems to cosmic dust. But as the Council fleets took their positions, something impossible happened. The stars changed. Where a moment before 3 binary stars had dominated the system's gravitational center, now a 4th sun blazed into existence. Not a natural stellar body, but something that radiated power signatures beyond anything in Council databases. The artificial star pulse with controlled fusion that made every sensor array in the system scream warnings about energy levels that shouldn't have been possible. Council Fleet Command. Chen transmitted across all frequencies, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what humanity was revealing. You are witnessing humanity's gift to the galaxy. The first stellar engineering project completed by a species you consider primitive. On the bridge of the Council Command vessel, Admiral Hexa stared at readings that defied comprehension. The artificial star wasn't just producing energy, it was somehow channeling and focusing the output of the system's 3 natural stars, creating a power source that exceeded the total energy production of entire council worlds. Impossible, whispered his chief science officer. The gravitational stresses alone should have torn the system apart. No known technology can manipulate stellar mechanics on this scale. But Chen wasn't finished. Computer, initiate full system reveal. Throughout the Kepler 442 system, humanity's true presence became visible. Massive ring worlds orbiting each planet, their surfaces gleaming with cities that stretch beyond horizons. Space elevators that connected planetary surfaces to orbital installations the size of small moons. And moving between them all, fleets of vessels that made the Council's mighty armada look like primitive chemical rockets by comparison. Speaker Moravec's voice crackled across communication channels, no longer carrying its usual diplomatic authority. What is the meaning of this display? Chen's response carried the weight of 2 centuries of preparation. This is what humanity has been building while you assumed we were struggling with basic interplanetary flight. We didn't need your guidance or your protection. We needed time to develop without interference. The artificial star pulsed brighter, and throughout the system, defensive installations that had been invisible moments before began revealing themselves. Weapons platforms that utilized technologies the Council had never seen, powered by the impossible energy source blazing at the system's heart. You will withdraw your fleets immediately, Chen continued. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. You cannot win a military engagement in this system, and your attempt would result in casualties on a scale that would destabilize galactic civilization. Admiral Hexa consulted his tactical officers desperately. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. The power levels they were observing were beyond Council comprehension. If humanity could manipulate stellar mechanics, their defensive capabilities were essentially unlimited. But it was Observer Kyrian who provided the context that changed everything. His ancient voice carried across Council communication networks, reaching every ship in the massive fleet. They are not showing us their weapons, he said quietly. They are showing us their infrastructure. This is not a military installation. This is a civilian colony. One of thousands. The implications hit the Council command structure like a physical blow. If this demonstration of impossible technology was merely a colonial system, what did humanity's actual military capabilities look like? Chen seemed to read their thoughts. Observer Kyrian is correct. The Kepler 442 system is a civilian research colony established 60 years ago to study stellar engineering techniques. Our actual military installations are more impressive. She paused, allowing the weight of that statement to settle over the Council fleets. You came here expecting to discipline a primitive species. Instead, you have discovered that humanity has been carefully managing first contact protocols for 2 centuries. We have been protecting you from the psychological trauma of realizing that your technological superiority was an illusion. Throughout the Council fleet, emergency consultations were taking place. Species after species was realizing that their entire understanding of galactic hierarchy had been built on deliberately false information. Humanity hadn't been struggling to catch up to galactic civilization. They had been deliberately holding back to avoid triggering exactly this kind of confrontation. What do you want from us? Speaker Moravec finally asked, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone whose worldview had been completely shattered. Chen's expression softened slightly. What we have always wanted, to be left alone to develop as we choose, to explore the galaxy as equals rather than subjects, to contribute to galactic civilization when we decide to do so, not when we are ordered to comply. And if species refuse to accept human independence. The artificial star pulsed once more, its energy output briefly spiking to levels that made every instrument in the system register overload warnings. Then they will discover that humanity's patience, like our peaceful facade, has limits. We have spent 2 centuries studying every species in the Council. We know your home worlds, your trade routes, your military capabilities, and your cultural breaking points. We hope this knowledge will never need to be applied. In the Great Chamber of the Galactic Council, emergency votes were being taken as a reality of humanity's revelation spread throughout known space. Species after species was voting to recognize human independence, driven not by respect but by the dawning realization that they had no choice. The humans had been playing the greatest long game in galactic history, and they had won. As the Council fleets began their withdrawal from the Kepler 442 system, Admiral Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity's peaceful facade was over, but their commitment to peaceful coexistence remained. They had revealed their strength not to conquer, but to ensure they would never again be threatened or underestimated. The galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps, Chen thought as she watched the Council vessels disappear into hyperspace, it might finally be fair. Earth had stopped playing nice, and the universe was about to become a much more interesting place.